Welcome to Tech Notice, and here I have 3 generations of 64-core AMD Ryzen Threadrippers. The 5995WX was launched in 2022. The Threadripper 7980X was launched in 2024. And then finally we have the 9980X, which was launched in 2025. What exactly is the difference? And when comparing them all, I found some very interesting things, because sometimes we might not get the performance we're expecting, and sometimes the performance per watt efficiency is a lot better in places where I didn't expect that. More power is not necessarily worse. And what we're going to be doing is comparing it to the 285K from Intel, just for a reference of some normal CPUs that everybody else can afford. It's so annoying. I don't want to pay hundreds of dollars to just change my Windows wallpaper just because my Windows isn't licensed. Well, why don't you try Hookeys? That's a ton cheaper, and if you use the code TN20, you get it even cheaper. What do you mean? How do I get it, and how is it possible? Well, see this video here, or the one you're watching? Click in the link on the video description, add the Windows 11 CD product to the cart, proceed to checkout, add the code TN20 for the extra discount. So what, the Windows 11 Pro OEM key is just $23.22? Yeah. Choose the preferred payment option and complete the purchase. The key will be available on the purchased orders in a few moments. Copy the key and paste it into your Windows activation settings, and you're all done. Oh, that was easy. Is that Ryan Gosling? No. Anyway, by the way, the same discount code also works website-wide, so go check out other products, maybe like Microsoft Office. First, I want to show you the actual differences in the Threadripper. So the socket is actually changed. So if you look underneath these, they're not the same anymore, as you can see. So the 7000 and 9000, they have exactly the same socket, but the 5000 and 7000, they don't go together. The top is very, very similar, like the IHS size is very, very similar. The other difference is actual notch on the IHS, which is on the side here, where you can see a better difference between the different sockets. The interesting thing is AMD didn't launch a Threadripper 5000 series, only Threadripper Pro. There was no 5980X, because these are all 80X, but there was 5995WX, which has 64 cores. The 7000, the same Pro chip, has now 96 cores, and then so does the 9000 series, which has also 96 cores. So this is kind of an interesting thing where the 5000 Threadripper had a bit of an identity crisis. We don't know exactly where we're gonna go. Are we gonna, upgrade it? Because they actually left the Threadripper 3000 series platform because a lot of people are upset, including Linus. If you remember that, Linus upgraded all of their workstations to Threadripper 3000 and then later on moved them back into Intel 12th gen, I believe, is the latest one that they're going for, because AMD abandoned the Threadripper 3000, but the 5000 did get 64 cores. So let's have a look at the specs. What exactly is the difference here, and how have they improved? So all of the 3 have 64 cores, 128 threads. The max turbo frequency has gone from 4.5 to 5.1 and then 5.4. So you can see there's a huge difference between 5000 and 7000. There's been an architectural change, and also the process node is different. They're pushing more power through, higher clock speeds. Everything is a lot different. So we're gaining 600 megahertz from 5000 to 7000 and 300 megahertz from 7000 to 9000. In terms of base frequency, we can see 2.7 gigahertz on 5000 and then extra 500 on 7000, and then 9000, it's exactly the same base frequency. The turbo frequency has changed. There's no E-cores, all of them are P-cores. If you know, Intel's going with the E-core, P-core architecture, but on the Threadripper, they're all just the same P-cores. Max PCIe generation on the 5000 is 4, and then the 7 and 9000 have PCIe Gen 5. PCIe lanes, because it's a Pro chip on 5000, has 128 PCIe lanes. that's PCIe Gen 4. The 7000 has 48, and the 9000 has 80 PCIe Gen 5 lanes. So in terms of bandwidth, the 7000 doesn't actually get double the bandwidth as 5000, even though PCIe Gen 5 is double the bandwidth. If we double 48, we get 96 equal to PCIe Gen 4 lanes, but the Threadripper 5000 still has more. Threadripper Pro, I gotta correct myself. But then the 9980X has 80, which comes to 160 PCIe Gen 4 equivalent lanes, if that makes sense. The RAM has gone from DDR4 to DDR5 as well. And then the memory channels on the 5000 Pro has 8, whereas the Threadrippers on 7000 and 8000 are 4. But the Threadripper Pro on 7000 and 8000 have 8 memory channels as well. In terms of memory speed, IMC spec, the 5995WX has 3200 megahertz on DDR4. The 7980X has 5200, and then the 9980X has literally doubled the memory bandwidth from 32 to 6400, which is insane. The main cache is the same, but the L2 cache has improved from 512 kilobytes to 1 megabytes per core on the 7000 and 9000 Threadripper systems. The base power has also increased from 280 watts to 350 watts on the 7000 and 9000. All of these CPUs can have BBO enabled, and you can push them even extra, which we'll talk about later on in this video, and there's no iGPU. The 5000 was based on TSMC 7 nanometer, 7000 was on 5 nanometer, and then 9000 now is on 4 nanometer process. The smaller the process node, the more transistors you can pack into the same size chips, which means just more efficient, more instructions per clock, and so on. If you want to check out the pricing, I'm going to leave the links in the description below, because in the end of the video, I'll talk about why the Threadripper 5000 might still be an incredible value for some people who are looking for a certain workflow. If you also want to check out my Testbench setup, I'm going to leave the links in the description below, but I'm using Asus boards for testing them. Asus TRX 50 for the Threadripper, and then the Asus WRX 80E Sage 2 for the 5000 series. I'm using Samsung 990 Pro on the Gen 1 on the 5000 series, and then Gen 5 a Samsung 9100 Pro on the 7000 and 9000 CPUs. All of them have RTX 4090s and equivalent RAM for their specs, 128 gigabytes on both these and 250 gigabytes of RAM on the Threadripper 5000. But none of the benchmarks actually cap the capacity, it's the speed that's important in here. So let's take a look at some of the benchmarks, and you can see Intel Core Ultra on the end there as well, just for a reference. But first we're looking at the 5000 series as the base benchmark, and then 7000, 9000 and Core Ultra are calculated against it. The 7000 series gets 35% increase in single core score, that's huge, and 31% increase in the multi-core scores. The Threadripper 9980X has 45% single core score increase and about 53% increase in the multi-core scores. But if you look at the 7000 and 9000, there isn't that much of a difference in the single core and multi-core scores. Roughly between 20% maximum difference. The single core is roughly about 10%, and the multi-core score is about 22, something like that percent difference, so just bear that in mind. The Core Ultra series is a lot better in single core, but a lot lower in the multi-core score as well. Geekbench 6, here we're not seeing that big of a difference between 7000 and 9000. As you can see, they're very, very close to each other, especially in the single core tests, but about 30% faster on multi-core on the Ryzen 7000 and about 45% faster in the Threadripper 9000. Interestingly, the 285K is about 16% faster in the multi-core scores and 60% faster in the single core scores in Geekbench 6 compared to the Threadripper 5000, even though the Threadripper 5000 has a lot more cores and a lot more threads. Looking at AI, Onyx AI, the 7980X is only 7.5% faster in the half scores, slightly slower in the single score, and about 26% faster in the quantized scores. The Threadripper 9000 is about 30% faster in the single core scores, so a huge difference there, 70% in half and about 70% in quantized as well. Interestingly, that little boost clock, or however this works, is a lot faster in there. But at the same time, for some reason, the 285K is faster than any of these in this benchmark. Now, OpenVINO AI test, we've seen that the Threadripper 7000 is 25% faster in the single core, 34% faster in the half, and 120% faster in the quantized, literally more than double the score in there. The Threadripper is about 80 to 86% in the single and half scores and 173% in the quantized score. So we're seeing a little bit of a better scaling in the OpenVINO compared to the Onyx AI. 285K is 116% faster in the single, which is fastest of them all. 75% faster in the half, which is not quite as fast as the Threadripper 9000, and still faster in the quantized scores. So not sure how this utilizes the hardware, but in that aspect, the Core Ultra is actually better. But a huge asterisk over here. This is just a CPU benchmark of the AI. If you're looking to build an AI machine that runs local LLMs or something like that, the Threadripper has a huge advantage over the rest of them. In fact, the Threadripper Pro 5000 series might have the biggest advantage just because it's got the most PCIe lanes, which means if you want to populate it with either Pro cards, AMD Pro 6000, for example, or the latest RTX Pro cards that have 96 gigabytes of VRAM, you can build huge, really powerful AI workstation that can run local LLMs or whatever models you want just because of the GPU memory. So in short, this AI test doesn't show you what these chips are really capable of doing, because you can really build it a lot more out with the Threadripper systems. I want to say that the Threadripper 7000 is kind of the weakest here just because it's got the least amount of PCIe lanes, which means that you just can't add as much GPUs or extra storage or whatever you want into there. It's the least upgradable, if that makes sense. Looking at some of the photo editing applications, Photoshop, the Threadripper 7000 is about 13% faster in overall scores, and then the Threadripper 9000 is about 25% faster in the overall score. So very good scaling between 5000, 7000, 9000. They literally get 13% and again, roughly about 13% there. The 285K is a whole other level. Photoshop likes fast single core scores. So obviously Intel wins in there. And we see a similar thing in Lightroom Classic. The Ryzen 7000 is about 26% faster in the overall scores. And the Threadripper 9000 is 37% faster in the overall scores. 285K with the boost profile is so much faster, more than double the score. So if you're doing photo editing, Threadripper probably isn't the best system for you, but that's not what the Threadripper is really meant for. This is just the benchmark here. Let's take a look at video editing. Interestingly, the Threadripper 5000 for some reason did not want to complete the extended scores. Whenever it was there, it crashed on Array Raw. It just didn't want to do it, even though the rest of the benchmark is still the same. Plenty of RAM, RTX 4090, latest GPU, drivers, everything is exactly the same. And then also there's another weird thing that's different. If you look at the standard overall scores, it's faster than the 7000 and 9000, but if you look at individual lower scores, sub-scores like long GOP, Interframe Raw, or GPU effects, they're all slower on the 5000 series. So something weird is going on with the 5000 series. But what I can tell you, that the 7000 and 9000 are a lot faster in overall scores and doing everything compared to the Ryzen 5000. And if you haven't seen my 32-core Ryzen 9000 series review, then I highly recommend checking that one out, because that is even faster than the 32-core, which kind of blows my mind. Go check that one out. As you can see, the 9980X Threadripper 9000 is faster than the 285K Intel on boost profile, which is very, very interesting. In some ways, Intel's not the best for video editing anymore. Let's take a look at After Effects. And this is the newest After Effects benchmark, so ran them all again. The Ryzen Threadripper 7000 is 34 to 35% faster in the overall scores. Some of the scores go up to 56% faster, for example, 3D standard. So there's a huge difference there. The Threadripper 9000 isn't that much different than the Threadripper 7000. As you can see, we're gaining 15% roughly between 7000 and 9000, but about 50% faster than the Threadripper 5000. So if you're on the Threadripper 5000, the 9000 seems quite the big upgrade for you. The 285K is fastest of them all in here. So if you're doing After Effects, interestingly, perhaps having a 285K is a better option for you. Now, that is not necessarily true in all cases, because if you require large amounts of RAM, then the Threadrippers obviously have the advantage of having a lot more RAM, and you can save all the previews in there. That being said, the 285K now also supports 256 gigabytes of RAM, which is quite a bit up there now, which wasn't, available there before. It was only 192, now 256. Let's move on to DaVinci Resolve. And here the Threadripper 7000 is only 10 percent faster than the 5000. Interestingly, the 5000 just keeps up really well in there, and perhaps the GPU is the one that you want to upgrade here rather than the CPU, because as you can see, from 7000 to 9000 we're gaining extra couple of percent in overall scores, so that's not that much different. And the 285K is somewhere between the Threadripper 5000 and 7000, so because all of them running the same GPUs, you can see in DaVinci Resolve we're not seeing that big of a difference. Fusion score though is hugely different. As you can see there, about 30% faster in 9000 and 29, so roughly about the same, 7000 and 9000, so they are a lot faster. But we all know that these are not necessarily the best workflows for Threadripper. What Threadrippers are built for is high computing tasks and high-end desktops, which is 3D rendering, architectural calculations, molecule calculations, aerospace, and so on. So if you're doing DNA or whatever medical calculations, that's where the Threadripper comes in. And I've got two tests here. One is Blender, which is 3D rendering, and then V-Ray, which is also 3D rendering, but perhaps more architectural. If you're wondering, what about some other complex CPU rendering benchmarks? I've seen that if you've seen Cinebench, V-Ray, Blender, then that same performance very well translates to everything else. So whether you're looking for very complex other calculations, then you kind of get the gist of what the difference there is. In Blender, from Threadripper 5000 to 7000, we're gaining between 40 to 43%, which is quite a big jump. Now, moving to Threadripper 9000, we're gaining extra 20 to 26% performance, and compared to 5000, we're about 67% faster than the Threadripper 5000. That is literally insane. And if you look at the 285K, you can see that this little guy just falls behind so much. It's got half the performance of 5995WX, or the Threadripper 5000 has double the performance of the 285K. So as you can see, in CPU rendering, even the newest of Intel can't just keep up with Threadripper CPU from a couple of years ago. Looking at V-Ray, the Threadripper 7000 has got 38.9% increase, and then now the Threadripper 9000 has a 60% increase over the Threadripper 5000. So again, over 20% increase between the 7000 and 9000. And then the 285K is literally half the performance of the Threadripper 5000. So as you can see, the CPU rendering on these Threadrippers is super impressive. And if you're wondering, is the Threadripper 5000 kind of a forget platform? Actually, no. If you require CPU rendering, the bang for buck that you get for the Threadripper 5000 64-core one might be a best option for you, because it just offers such a good value for that. And the PCI lanes, you might want to upgrade a lot of storage or build yourself a NAS, super fast NAS, because PCIe Gen 4 storage now is very affordable, and if you want to build an NVMe NAS and populate all the PCIe slots, this is an absolutely insane platform to do that, a lot more affordable than the 7000 and 9000. But the thing is, in the beginning of the video, I mentioned about overclocking, because all of these can be overclocked. And what about power efficiency? And this is where I found some interesting things. My expectation was that the Threadripper 5000 is going to be the most efficient, because the 64 cores, the lower TDP of 70 watts lower, 280 watts rather than 350, that is just going to be super impressive. Because of that, I wanted to calculate the average. But before that, I wanted to also see how much power are they pulling with PBO enabled. So the Threadripper 5995WX, when enabling PBO, we can pull up to 465 watts, depending on the motherboard, depending on BIOS and so on, between 400, 465, also depending on your chip. Sometimes it might not pull that much, sometimes a little bit more, but that's what I'm seeing. About 515 on the 7980X and about 730 on the 9980X. So as you can see, the 9980X can be pushed a lot more. So if you want that, seems like the Threadripper 9000 has the best overclocking performance, where we can literally pull more than double its power draw with just PBO. But the most interesting thing here is power efficiency. Which one of these chips is the most power efficient? Obviously Intel, with even its 236 watt power draw, has the lowest power draw here. Where do these line up? And I wanted to calculate the average. So we're taking Cinebench R24 multi-core test and then dividing that by the score with how much power we're pulling. The 5995WX has got a score of 15.4 points per watt. The Threadripper 7000 actually increases that by 5.2% to 16.2 points per watt. The Threadripper 9000 increases that even further to 18.9, which is 22.7% increase compared to the Threadripper 5000. And then the 285K has 10.5 points per watt, which is 31% lower score compared to the Threadripper 5000. Now, the Threadripper 5000, as you can see, was very, very power efficient, but AMD managed to improve it even further with Threadripper 7000, even though they increased the power package. But the Threadripper 9000 is the most efficient CPU I have tested per watt. It's just absolutely insane how much power they're just pushing through. Lowering the node to 4 nanometers from TSMC, packing more transistors, keeping the wattage per package the same, but giving more performance. It's absolutely impressive, because if you look, we're getting roughly about 20, sometimes 22% performance increase on the Threadripper 9000 compared to the 7000, but that's improved power efficiency exactly the same. So we've got linear increase, and then the power efficiency is exactly the same. So the performance and power efficiency, absolutely amazing. Now that I did not expect. Now there is a little caveat there though. If you're thinking that AMD beats the Intel absolutely here, it's not exactly true. It's only true when we're running 100% workloads on the CPU. If we have a mixed workload, Intel is actually so much more efficient, even more efficient than the Ryzen desktop series, the 9950X, just because its idle performance is out of this world. These Threadrippers idle at 50, 60, sometimes 100 and 150 watts, and the system power though, just from the wall, just leaving the system on, is a couple of hundred watts. It's ridiculous. It's just everything needs a lot of power. Perhaps having the different dies, they require a lot of power to just run them at idle, and it's the same with AMD Ryzen chips. But Intel can idle at less than 10 watts. Sometimes that is 10 times lower than what the Threadripper offers here. So if you've got mixed workloads like Photoshop and something like that, obviously the Intel is a lot more efficient there. But if you require a lot of computation, calculation, there is nothing like Threadripper. I would love to know what you guys think in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this type of content, check out some links of these things in the description below. I'm going to leave it all there, and I'll see you very, very soon. Okay, bye-bye.